Hey, thanks for joining me today. I think everyone is aware that we're facing some pretty difficult times. Um, Inflation has just gone crazy. The supply chain issues, food shortages are coming as I understand it. Power issues in some parts of the world are just a real problem. Here in America, fortunately, I'm in Oklahoma, we haven't had any real issue yet with power outages. But I know in some parts of Europe, there's great restrictions being put on how much energy you can use. And so thought it'd be a good idea to explore what we can do to get our workshops ready so that as we face these difficult times, we're prepared. So in my mind, somebody that is prepared to work on things during these difficult times is going to be just way ahead. New items may not be available, and fixing existing items may be the only way you can have some of these things. Also, a person that can build and repair, fix things is going to, as a part of society, is going to be very valuable, especially if you're prepared to do it when the times are challenging, when there's power issues, when there's, those kind of things. So let's look at these 10 tips I have, 10 ideas on how you can get your workshop better prepared to deal with these difficult times. So tip number one that I have is about lighting and power. When there's a power outage, or if it's just nighttime and you have to work on something, you don't have, especially if you don't have power, you don't have light to see with, then being able to work on things is just a real problem. So some portable lighting, things that you can do to provide some lighting would be very valuable. The first thing, of course, just a good flashlight. This is a Surefire flashlight. It's very bright, and this one's actually I bought for $1 at a flea market, but Surefires are normally pretty expensive. But a good quality flashlight is, I think, really essential. Headlamps are super valuable if you're trying to work and you need to have your hands free. You can put this on. Now, this is kind of a big one compared to some of the new modern ones. I got this a number of years ago. It is LED. It's super bright. It's a Streamlight, which is a good brand. It is, like I say, this is a little bigger than some of the new ones, but very effective. And if you're having to work with both your hands and you need to be able to see what you're doing, headlamps are just fantastic. The other thing are portable work lights. This is just a simple little Harbor Freight rechargeable light. This one's kind of cool in that you can use it as a power bank too. You can actually plug USB devices into it and use the battery in this thing as like a power bank. So it's super bright light. It will give you lots of light you need to work on whatever you're doing. It has some flashy modes and stuff that I guess you can put beside your vehicle if you're stalled to prevent people from running into you. But these are not very expensive. I think these are like $39. They're rechargeable, and I've got a couple of these. They have a little stand. The thing I like about them is they have a 1/4-20 tripod socket on the bottom, so I can put them on a light stand or a tripod and support them that way. So lighting is, I think, essential. I also have propane lanterns and extra propane, so I can provide just area room lighting too during power outages. Here in Oklahoma, from time to time we have ice storms, and the ice storms, a lot of our power is still above ground on poles, and ice will weigh down the lines and tree limbs, and the lines will break, or the trees will actually explode and just fall and crash down on power lines. And we had a situation a couple years ago in October where we didn't have power for a couple of weeks. And so having all kinds of rechargeable lighting is very helpful. Now, in terms of power, like I said, here in Oklahoma we haven't had too much issue yet. I think if we do have maybe this winter some rolling blackouts or whatever, they're probably going to be relatively brief. I don't really, this summer's been very hot in Oklahoma, and I'm sure energy usage has been really high. So I think we've been really blessed so far not to have any real issues. But I do have a portable generator. It's a pretty good size one. I can power probably most anything I want to in my house, certainly all my refrigeration and lighting that I need. I probably couldn't run central heat and air with it. Heat maybe, but not air, since my heat is natural gas. But anyway, so backup power, you might want to think about a solar power setup, some solar panels in the charger and controller to be able to have solar power. Be another good option. But make sure you've got something you can use for backup power when the power goes out. Tip number 2 is making sure that you have all your hand tools in order. Make sure that all your screwdrivers and pliers and wrenches and hammers and all the hand tools and things that you need for your workshop are in place. I am constantly kind of on the lookout for tools, but I'm really bad sometimes about, I think of some tool or see some tool that I'd really like to have, and I put off buying it because, it's just, I try to be frugal and not just spend money, capriciously. But still, I think right now it's important that we get the tools we need, make sure our workshop's well, equipped, and we're ready to deal with whatever comes forward. So, I don't know if you're like me. Like I say, I often put off buying tools when I really should go ahead and do it. And so I think it's real important that you make sure all your hand tools are in order, organized, got everything you need, and replace anything that's broken or missing. And supply chain issues have been bad, and they're probably going to get worse. And so at some point in the future, some tool you may think you would like to have, you may not be able to get. So if you can get it right now, I would say get it. And it'll probably be cheaper if you buy it now than if you buy it later, because inflation is just going to probably make it worse. So make sure your tools are all in order, hand tools are in order, and you're well stocked on all the tools you need. Have everything you need to use your shop the way you need to. The tip number 3 is making sure you're well stocked on consumables. So, those things that you use up and have to replace in your shop on a regular basis, things like extra saw blades and screws, like these are some drywall screws. Make sure you've got plenty of screws and nuts and bolts, and you've got a good stock of those things like glue, like super glue, wood glue, the different kinds of cements or glues you may use, sandpaper, shop towels, just whatever in your shop that you use on a regular basis that you might need to replace. Make sure you have a good stock on it. At some point we may have difficulty getting some things. Supply chain issues, as I understand it, are likely to get even worse. And of course, with inflation, buying it today is cheaper than buying it tomorrow. And so I would say that make sure you're well stocked on consumable items. Kind of go through your cabinets and see, what you have, what you may need to replace or add to, those things that you use commonly, and make sure you have plenty of stock. Now, I know some things, especially things like glues and stuff, may time out if you can only buy so much. But still, make sure you have a good stock of the things that you may need, and that your consumable items are in good order. I mean, there's so many things that we use on a regular basis. Fuses, batteries, like I was talking about, saw blades, screwdriver bits, just all those kind of things that wear out and you have to replace. So make sure your consumables are in good order, got everything you need, so that when you're having to work on something, you don't have to worry about whether you have the materials or the tools, supplies you need to do it. Tip number 4 is stocking up on the chemicals that you need. Now, some may have considered these things just part of the consumables, and maybe they are, but things that, there's a lot of these chemicals that I don't use that frequently and may not think of, so I wanted to put these kind of in a separate category. Things like paint thinner, solvents, spray paint, stains and finishes, all those kinds of things, the chemicals you use in your shop, alcohol, just whatever chemicals you use in your shop, make sure you've got plenty. Things like paint stripper, all those kind of things are just really important to make sure that you're stocked up on chemicals. Now, I know storage of chemicals is a thing, and you've got to make sure that you store them properly, and maybe in some locations you're only allowed to store certain amounts. But the importance of having the chemicals you need is again, just like everything else we're talking about, supply chain issues may make getting some of these things difficult, so it's important that you're well stocked on the chemicals you need. Tip number 5 is making sure you're stocked up on lubricants. Now again, some may think that lubricants are consumable, but these are things I just wanted to point out specifically because they're easily overlooked. So, everyone uses different things, different lubricants in their shop, but make sure, if you have motor oil or just, different kinds of lubricants, specialty lubricants. This is actually sewing machine oil. Not that I work on sewing machines, but I work on a lot of fine equipment that's useful for. Specialty things like sharpening oil for your sharpening stones, special greases, anything you use in your normal work, make sure you have plenty. And here in America, for those that are in America, WD-40 is kind of a staple. Most places, most shops have some. Most shops are going to have some motor oil for your car, your lawnmower, whatever. Greases, different kinds of lubricants that you use. Just whatever it is that you use on a regular basis lubricant wise, kind of go through your lubricants, make sure you have plenty. And again, a lot of these lubricants are petroleum based, so as the price of gas and oil goes up, so do the price of these lubricants. Right now, gas prices are down a little bit, but still quite high, so it may be a good time to buy some of these things. But make sure you're stocked up on lubricants, and you have everything you need to keep things working smoothly and properly in your shop. And if you're like me, these lubricants not only lubricate machinery and my car and my lawnmower, but they also act as protectants for tools, keep things from rusting. So again, very important to have. Make sure you're stocked up on lubricants. Tip number 6 is to make sure all of your hand tools are in good order, ready to go, clean, sharp, and adjusted. So, the last thing you want to do is need to start on a project and find out that some tool you need is not ready to go. So it's a really good time to make sure everything is in order and ready for service. If you've got some vintage tools that you're wanting to restore and put back into service, it's a really good time to do that. I love using old vintage tools, and that's why my channel is called The Tool Junkie, because I just love tools. But if you've got some projects in mind to restore some old tools, probably a good time to do that. Get them ready to go. When you need to work on something, it is such a pleasure to pick up a tool that's clean, adjusted, sharp, ready to go. All you have to do is pick it up, start using it. So if you got any tools that are starting to collect a little bit of rust, that need to be cleaned up, need to be lubricated, need to be adjusted, sharpened, whatever, make sure you get all that kind of stuff taken care of. Make sure all your tools are in just top working order, ready to go, so that when you need them, they're there for you. So get all your tools in order and ready to use. Tip number 7 is think about getting some manual tools to use in case you don't have power. So we're so used to using power tools. Now obviously some battery operated tools will still work when the power goes out until the batteries are drained. But if we are looking at severe power restrictions, then being able to work with manual tools that don't require power is very important. One of the things that I've been kind of working on is, and I've picked up 2 or 3 of these, is getting some hand drills. Now, if you start looking for hand drills, just a quick tip, the kind you want are the kind that actually have 2 pinion gears on them rather than just one. And I've picked up a couple of these. This one somebody painted red, so I'm going to have to strip all the paint off of it and clean it up and lube it. But it's a good, nice size hand drill that once it's ready to go, gives me the ability to drill without electricity. This has a little compartment in the back. There's even an old drill bit in the back of it. But it's pretty neat drill from its day. These are things I've picked up at flea markets. This is another little Stanley drill that's missing the chuck. I'm going to have to come up with a chuck for it. But again, it's got 2 pinion gears. It's a Stanley. Actually runs pretty smooth. Once I get a good chuck for it, then I'll have a good usable drill. And so, there may come a point where we don't have access to power tools. So, hand saws, making sure this, I love Japanese saws. If you haven't ever used a Japanese saw, you can get one. You're really in for a treat. But, hand saws of, not only for making straight cuts, but even just a simple coping saw like this can do the work of a jigsaw or even a bandsaw. One of the things I love doing is working on musical instruments. Not only building some musical instruments, but repairing them. And often, the woods that used in musical instruments are often quite thin. So cutting cutting out pieces with even something like this is quite easy. But if if you can't fire up your bandsaw because there's no electricity and you need to cut some intricate shape, just a simple coping saw is a great way to do that. So there's a lot of choices for hand saws and hand drills and other hand tools to replace the power tools that we normally use. No, they're not as fast. No, they're not as efficient. Obviously, that's why better tools were developed. Well, maybe not better, but more efficient tools. But still, when you need to cut something and there's no electricity, or you need to drill a hole, or whatever it is, having the right tools will be real important. So things like planes, chisels, saws, hand drills. Make sure you've got some manual options for your tools, because you may find yourself in a situation where power is not an option. You need to get some work done, and so there's a way to do it. So make sure you've got some options for hand tools. What you may actually find is when you start using some of these non-powered hand tools, you may find a real attraction to using some of these. I mean, I can only say until you try just using some of these tools and putting away the power, your shop becomes a lot quieter and calmer, and the sound of a sharp tool cutting through wood is just a special sound. But anyway, make sure you've got some good manual tools that you can use to take care of work when there's work to be done and you don't have any electricity. So always good to have some extra options. Tip number 8 is think about getting all your garden and yard tools in good order. So if you don't plant a garden, if you don't do that normally, especially with the food shortages we're coming up, gardening is becoming more and more popular. And I think it's, even if you only have room on a patio or a balcony for some pots that you can put plants in, then even doing that is really, probably going to be important. I would say that any food you could grow means you don't have to buy it, and then it's available. So thinking about a garden, even this time of year, it's August right now. It's been so hot in Oklahoma that frankly my summer garden yielded very little. The heat really, when it's over 100 degrees for days on end, it really impacts a garden. No matter how much you water it, the heat kills pollen and things just don't, the plants grow, but they don't produce any vegetables, or not many. But so I'm looking forward to a fall garden, and so I'm kind of getting ready for that. So make sure your garden tools are in order. Are they in good shape? Are they straightened? And things that are bent or broken or damaged, get those things cleaned up and replaced. I really didn't have any garden tools here in my workshop other than this Japanese. These are really fascinating. It's a Japanese call it a hori. It's a combination garden shovel knife. It's got a sharp plain edge and a serrated edge, and it's got measurements on the inside where you can measure how deep you're digging. And this has kind of become my universal garden tool. I really love this thing for just small gardening. Looks kind of wicked, but in fact it's a really effective gardening tool. So this is in Japan what gardeners use for a lot of their work. But whatever you use, make sure your gardening tools are in good order. They're clean and sharp and straightened, and clean the rust off of them and make sure they're ready to go. I think it's going to be real important to think about gardening in the coming months, maybe years. So I know in some parts of the world there's probably going to be some serious famine. I imagine here in America we grow enough food that will probably be okay, but even our food supplies are going to be short because of the lack of fertilizer and some drought issues. Texas is having, and Oklahoma having really horrible drought issues. So it's going to definitely impact some of our crops. So make sure your gardening tools are in order and you're ready to work on a garden. And if you've never done any gardening, again, start with some good sized pots and with some easy to plant vegetables. There's a lot you can grow and produce quite a bit of of food, a surprising amount in a small amount of space. So having a garden is probably a good idea, but make sure all your garden tools are ready to go. Just kind of like your tools inside your workshop, make sure all your garden tools are ready to go. Tip number 9 is to think about getting some manual options for your lawn and garden care. So, you know, mowing your yard, here in America, mowing your yard and using a weed eater, whether it's gasoline or electric, is just been something that we have, you know, become pretty accustomed to. And yet I know that there could come a time, especially in Europe with the electricity issues they're having, the power issues, that there could come a time where having to do these things manually becomes necessary. So, you know, the big one is the lawnmower, and there are push type real, you know, manual powered mowers available. It's been a little while since I searched for one, but the last time I looked, there was a couple of companies that actually still made them. Kind of a green energy thing, you know, mow your yard with a manually powered mower and don't pollute, and I get that. So I have used some of those push mowers back in my teenage years, and even in my 20s, I guess it was, I found one at a yard sale and cleaned it up and lubed it and sharpened it, and it worked quite well. It's obviously a lot more work than a gasoline powered mower, but if you don't let your yard get too tall, it was not too bad to push it around the yard and mow the yard with. So it's definitely an option. So that's, you know, if you find one of those at a yard sale or something, or a flea market, it's probably going to be pretty cheap. It's probably going to need some, you know, attention to get it in working order again. But if, you know, having one of those might be an important option if you need to get your yard mowed and for whatever reasons you can't use gasoline or an electric lawnmower or even a rechargeable, you know, if there's power issues. So I know, and there's already some states in America where the use of gasoline lawnmowers is really being discouraged. So in California, I know it's already a big issue. A couple weeks ago, I did a video on a Milwaukee Sawzall that I had used for doing a bunch of tree trimming, and it didn't even occur to me to get out the old pruning shears, you know. And I could have probably done a significant amount of that work with a pair of these and maybe just a handsaw. But having some of these tools for manually taking care of yard work be really important. You know, manual hedge trimmers. And I hate hedges. I dug all my hedges up, so I don't have to trim hedges anymore. But things like grass shears. I remember when I was a teenager, I used to literally edge my parents' lawn with a pair of these on my hands and knees, go around the yard and manually cut the edge of the yard to trim it. And I kind of hate to have to return to that, but if I had to do it, making sure I had a pair of grass shears would be an important thing. Now, just like my last tip mentioned, tip number 8, I need to get the rust off these, get them sharpened and cleaned up and lubricated in case I need them. Really, I'm surprised I still even have a pair of these. It's been so long since I used them. I was kind of surprised when I went out in the garage they were still there. But having some manual options for your lawn and garden care, I think is probably going to be really important. We could get to a point where, you know, the only way to take care of things is without power, and being able to do that with manual tools is probably going to be an important thing. So at least make sure you are looking into some manual options for some of these things, just in case being able to do it with power tools is not an option. Well, tip number 10 is about getting... You can't be in the video. No. You want to be in the video? Well, come on. Come on. There you go. Yeah. There we go. All right. Tip number 10 is making sure your dog is in your videos whenever you shoot one. Say, hi, Riley. Yes. You're a good boy. Yes. Oh, I know. Yes. I want to lick your face, too. Not. All right. Get down. Shh. Tip number 10 is to make sure you have the materials on hand for the projects you may be working on. Now, I like to work on musical instruments, so I keep a certain amount of hardwoods related to that, and some softwoods for like soundboards and bracing. But the for a regular workshop, you might want to think about what other types of wood you want to keep in stock. Some different types of lumber and plywood. Again, depending on the kind of work you do, that may mean if you do plumbing work, PVC pipe, fittings, other plumbing supplies that you might need. Just making sure that whatever materials you believe you may need, that you have some in stock. Again, we don't know what supply chain issues are going to be like. I understand lumber prices are coming down a little bit right now as the housing market weakens. So probably now is a good time to stock up on whatever lumber you may need. If you need drywall material, if you need metals, if you do machine work and you want to stock up on different types of metals. If you like to do welding, making sure you have the welding supplies you need and the metals you need to do metal work. Just whatever the field you work in requires, make sure that you are stocked up on the materials you need to do that. So I'm going to be looking at some extra woods for making musical instruments, things like that, and see if I can get stocked up a little bit better on some of those things, so that when I want to work on a project, so I can do that. And at the same time, that's kind of a hobby, it's a fun thing. I'm probably also going to stock up on things like common plumbing parts that I may need for my home, even electrical things, electrical wire nuts, different things like that. Any kind of electrical fixtures or back boxes, those kind of things that I need for household repairs. Just make sure I have a good stock of those, so that if I need something and it's not available in the stores, I'm not stuck. So think about the materials you may need and make sure you're well stocked on whatever materials you need for doing the work you do. Well, those are my 10 tips on how to get your shop prepared for the upcoming hard times. Like I said, we've got some difficult times we're facing, and there's just a lot of stuff going on between inflation and power availability and food availability and supply chain issues. It's just we, as not just here in America but all over the world, facing just some incredible challenges. And I think personally, and I could be wrong, but I personally think that we're really kind of just at the beginning of some of this. I think it's probably going to get a lot worse before it gets better. And I hope that's not true. I'm usually not negative about things like that, but there's just a lot of geopolitical stuff going on in the world that's not pointing towards things getting better anytime soon. So I am thinking that it's time to get my shop in order, so that whatever happens, I can deal with it. If I need to fix something, if I need to build something, I have the means to do that. And I think that's helpful for not only my family. I think it's helpful for society. If things really kind of fall apart, people that can work with their hands and build and repair things are going to be just really valuable people. So I don't really predict the world's going to get to that point. I just think that with the challenges we're facing, it's important to get our workshops in good order so that we're prepared. Anyway, if you have any ideas or suggestions on what you think might be a good idea to get your shop prepared, I would love it if you would leave a comment and share that with us, and we can continue that discussion. If you have any questions or thoughts, please do leave me a comment. If you would, please also click the like and subscribe buttons and the notification bell. That always helps the channel grow. And as always, thanks for watching.